Hello and welcome to House of the Flow, State of the Builder with Juhl T. Lenard. That's me. So today we're going to talk about, and this week we've been talking about the founder problem of revenue is down. Now that is clearly a visible result. However, it doesn't tell you about the origin because the reality is that revenue is down can originate in 4 different locations in the revenue system. Okay. So today we're taking a 30,000-foot executive view of revenue is down. And we're specifically looking to understand what it can tell you and what it cannot tell you. And more importantly, is what the founder needs to understand before making a decision on what to change. So let's take a look at the revenue system. So the builder reality here is that the founder sees the numbers first. You see the numbers first. And that's before the team, before the board, before advisors. You see the numbers. And immediately we want to take action, right? The result lands and action is required. It's what we do. Okay. So there's a tension. Clearly, there's a tension. And the question becomes, what do we change? What do we need to do? What action do we need to take? And so then what we know is we just know what the revenue requirement is and that we're below it. What we don't know is where did the gap enter in the revenue system? Okay, because there's more than one spot. The number confirms the result, revenue is down, but it does not confirm or give you any intel on the location. So, as I said before, when the numbers drop, we want to take action. But action can feel safer than uncertainty. But that's not always true. Right? And what complicates this is that business is no longer a solo act. What I mean by that is you've always had different aspects, marketing, sales, delivery, retention as part of business. But what's different now is the impact that technology has had on it, and that so much of the business is outsourced to different people, different vendors, and there's no central consolidation of what is going on. So even though there are multiple locations where the revenue is down can occur, there's no visibility into them because it's dispersed. The signal travels through the whole system, but you can only respond to the extent that there is visibility. So, and the thing is, speed, we all want speed, but it increases the cost of the wrong decision, okay? The wrong read. So when you move fast on an unverified assumption, the business pays twice. You pay once for the action, but you also pay for the correction, right? So not making the right change is costly. The faster the response, the more responsive the misread. This means you can fail fast and furious multiple times, right? So we don't need another tactic. We need a way to navigate the revenue system. And in this environment, because things are moving so quickly, there is a distortion. And we think more activity, more tools, more people. are going to decrease the amount of uncertainty. I said less certainty. But the reality is, if you're a hammer, everything else is a nail. So to your web person, it's a web issue they can fix. To your SEO person, it's an SEO problem. To your lead gen person, it's definitely demand, right? So we need we need a way to be able to discern and be sovereign in the decisions that happen around the business. The harder the push, the harder it becomes to see what is actually happening. So the wrong question costs more than the wrong answer, right? It's kind of like that, oh, which, you're climbing the ladder, but the ladder is on the wrong building type of thing. So Hustle asks, what are we going to do about it? Flow asks, what does the evidence actually tell us, right? One is an effort question. The other is an interpretation question. So earlier this week, we looked at a pattern, and we looked at revenue is down, and we identified one of multiple potential patterns. Demand deficit is the one that we focused on in that session. And if you comment replay underneath this video, I'll send you the replay so you can look at the detail. So this is demand deficit. Deficit is when the business does not create enough qualified opportunity to support the revenue requirement. Now, we are not talking about there's not enough leads, because more leads doesn't solve this problem. It's not necessarily a structural gap between the opportunity created and the revenue required. It's the pipeline can't support the number regardless of the close rate. Okay? It's not about need more leads. Not always. Sometimes it is. But we need to see the evidence. So demand deficit is one condition, not every explanation. So the pattern tells you where to look, but it does not tell you what you will find there, right? But we need something, because everything is, it's in a system somewhere, it's at another vendor. We need a way to know where to look, right? And we have to get above, throw something up against the wall and see if it sticks, right? So the revenue doesn't come from just one place. Revenue moves through a system. Visibility creates demand. Interest becomes commitment. Delivery fulfills the promise of value. And value compounds into cash flow. It's a system. Now, there are two conditions that reveal whether or not the system is working. Visibility is, can you see where the behavior is breaking down? Strain is where the system is under more pressure than it can carry. Kind of like you go to the doctor. It's like, where does it hurt? Okay, that's a strain. And the reason why patterns matter is because when patterns exist, you can see system behavior. Without a pattern, every result looks like a new problem. With a pattern, the system can tell you where to look. So you don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm the only one. This is something new. No, there's patterns. Okay. Now, I'm going to take myself over here. Hold on a second. So this is the operating grid. It represents the revenue system. One revenue result, 4 possible locations, because the number doesn't identify the quadrant. So when you look at Spotlight, if the issue is messaging or visibility, this is a location to look. If we're looking at follow-up or the sales process, then we're looking at offer. If it's related to somehow onboarding or fulfillment, we would look in activate. And if it's retention and customer experience, we would look into retain. The number doesn't identify the quadrant. Okay. So what does visibility mean? I'm getting comfortable. Like, what is visibility? What does visibility mean? It means recognizing and locating the behavior. It's not awareness. It's not reach. It's the ability to see where in the revenue system the behavior is occurring and where it's not. Okay. The law of scale says scaling amplifies what already exists. So if the system is working, scale accelerates the result. But if the system is broken, scale accelerates the damage. And we have a sequence to diagnosing the location. Okay, so revenue is a result. So before you respond to locate the gap, we need to look at different things, right? We have to slow down a little bit, which I hate it. I personally don't like to slow down in some cases, but we need to do this, right? So the result is, what did the number actually say? The requirement is, what does the business need to function? And we looked at this in the lab, okay, in detail for our model case. The location, where in the revenue system did the gap enter? And what confirms the pattern, not just the feeling? There's a diagnostic sequence that occurs. Now, when we looked at demand deficit, the evidence test was applied to that particular pattern. Demand deficit accounted for the model gap. It means it was mathematically accurate. So the volume of qualified opportunity was insufficient to support the revenue requirement. But the surviving evidence is not the same as explaining it, right? So the pattern identified the condition, but it did not locate the origin. So it tells us a behavior we can look at least, right? The pattern does not equal the root cause. The pattern is not an explanation. The same pattern can have different origins within the revenue system. Low visibility is different than the wrong targeting, is different than weak positioning, is different than market shift. But the pattern tells you where to look, right? And then we can do the additional research. So the pressure is, can you locate the gap before you fund the response, right? Because every dollar deployed without evidence is a guess. An evidence-supported cause, I should say is a guess, not a bet, but you know what I mean. But it's not a decision. It's really a guess. So at this point, it's time for reflection. And the question, one second. The questions, here. And so the question becomes, what result am I reacting to? What explanation am I assuming? And what evidence would support or change it? We look at this in Profit Visibility Lab. We're looking at, here's what we're reacting to. Here's how I'm explaining what I see here. But then we have to look and say, okay, so what would change that decision? And what else do we not know? Because there's always something we don't know. Okay. Now, as we wrap up, I want to let you know. So today we revealed what the result can and cannot tell you. If you want to see the actual competing explanations You have to look at the lab. But that's easy. Just comment below replay, and I'll send you the matching revenue is down investigation. Okay. And with that, if there's no questions, I just want to encourage you, before you make that pivot, before you bust a move, I'll tell you where I grew up now. Before you make that another move, make sure that you know what the evidence says about it, what the evidence supports. And I encourage you, as always, to see more, guess less, and always diagnose before you deploy. Until next time, bye for now.